looks the
Treat
same.
our affiliates nicely.
The letters look the same.
WEZS New Hampshire,
Easily confused.
WJHC Northern Florida, Patriot Voices Northern Michigan, KLID Missouri, Kona, Alaska, WKMQ Missouri, and of course Mississippi. I didn't rewrite it on my notes. And of course Wham, Detroit, Ann Arbor. Hello, Linda. She doesn't listen to this show. She never listens. The people who started our show, they don't even listen. I don't even think they like us.
I don't like us. If you like us, Linda, text me right now.
If you like us, text us. Or tweet us at S. Crowder. I don't have that much time on my hands. So,
you know what? Send an email.
yeah, let's just send an email. Send an email to Jared, and then I'll get back to you. Gosh, there's so much that happened this week. Zuckerberg thinks we can fight ISIS through love. It's true.
Can we volunteer him for the front lines? I would love that.
The Obamacare numbers, the town halls.
Worse? How could they get any worse? Take a look around you, Ellen. We're at the threshold of hell.
You know what else? Did you hear about Sarah Palin's new show?
Is there a new one?
No. You haven't heard this?
No.
Sarah Palin's going to be like a Judge Judy.
Are you serious?
Despite no legal experience. They're going to show up, and she is going to settle.
Right wing and bitter, clinging. Can I get a hallelujah?
That should be
That should be your theme
that
song.
should be your theme song. At least in between the commercials and such.
You know, I want to like Sarah Palin, but she makes it hard.
She doesn't want me to like her. She does not.
Well, she doesn't want you to like her.
America. Well, obviously.
Nobody wants you to like
me, America.
You are not an approval they seek.
No.
Okay, before we get to Zuckerberg ISIS, we're going to have Shapiro on next because there's been a development in the Donald Trump-Michelle Field situation. I know people are all on different sides of that, and I'll try and hold Ben's feet to the fire and get to the bottom of it and see what the truth is. Yeah, listen, I'm not a Trump guy, and Ben and I have known each other for a long time. I think that this has been mishandled by all sides. So we'll try and be fair, but I know many of you will still bitch that it's not fair. One thing I want to talk about before we get into all this news is the idea, and you talked about this, justice versus equality is very important. I think a lot of people don't understand.
Justice versus fairness.
Justice versus fairness, because Bernie Sanders now, a lot of people don't realize he's picking up a lot of steam. He's gaining a lot of ground on Hillary. Is it likely that he wins? No. But he is doing far, far better than anybody predicted. And that's on this promise of fairness and distribution and getting your fair share. People in our generation really seem to place, and if you look at the Pew Research polls, place an emphasis on fairness. And someone is why is my computer on right now? Oh, I guess I'll talk about this later. My wife is texting me during the show, and she should never be texting me during the show. She should always stop.
Unless she's saying that she likes us.
No, that's enough of that.
Email Hillary.
Email it. Fairness and justice aren't really the same thing. You know, we talked about this as a Christian. God is just, but life isn't fair. And a lot of people say, well, what do you mean by that? Listen, I certainly think that as a society it is much more... not much more important. It's pivotal that we place importance on justice, not fairness. Certainly not fairness of outcomes. That's what leftists believe in promising. Let me give you an example of justice versus equality. You're laughing because you know this.
I know where this is going.
So I was a kid in French Canadian school, okay? This is a true story. And this is where I learned as a kid that fairness is and political correctness it corrodes the soul. Monsieur Lacaire was my teacher. Must have been second grade. And my dad worked for a company called Odessa. I don't know what they did, something with cars. And one of the things is he had these nice pens. He had a bunch of pens, Odessa, and my dad's name was on the pens. So we opened up my desk in my class, and I had a bunch of Odessa pens. And it said, Darren Crowder. So I had those, and there was this kid, I don't want to name names, Daniel Cuffling. We became friends later on, and he stole my pens. He took my pens. I was going, where are my pens? And then I look over, lo and behold, Daniel Cuffling is writing with a pen with my dad's name on it. I go, hey, that's my pen. No. I said, come on, it's clearly my pen, my dad's name. Does your dad work for an American company, Odessa? Is your dad's last name Crowder? And we got into a fight over it. We were yelling. I escalated it. Probably a little too quickly. That's just how I was. And the teacher comes in and says, what's going on? And Daniel says, well, he's yelling and saying that I stole his pen. I said, he did steal my pen. And the teacher goes, well, who's telling the truth? I said, I'm telling the truth. My dad's name is on that pen. There's 5 more pens that I have with my dad's name on that pen. You can find them in his desk. And the teacher goes, can you two work this out with your words without fighting? And I told the teacher, I said, I don't need to work this out. It's not it's your job is to make sure that people stop stealing pens. I don't know if you notice, it's a problem here in your classroom. Broken window theory. Let's fix the pens before everyone starts getting their pens stolen. Teacher goes, well, if you can't work this out with words, nobody gets the pens, and took them away. They had my dad's name on the pen and my dad's company. They were clearly stolen pens. And the teacher said, well, if you can't work it out, what's fair is nobody gets the pen. Now, that was fairness, but that was not justice. And what does that tell you, right? It places a lot more burden on the person who's telling the truth, on the person who's not breaking the law when you're whether it's someone abusing welfare, tweeting, bitching about how they need their fair share from their smartphone while they have welfare. By the way, if you're on welfare, okay, if you're and you're using it and you're tweeting, you should be put on mute. I don't care what you have to say. Your bitching is irrelevant. What does it do? All Daniel needed to say is, well, it's my pen too, because he knew it was a lie, and he knew it didn't matter at that point. Burden of proof was even though he knew I was telling the truth. That's what that favors. When you just talk about fairness and feelings and making sure that everybody leaves feeling good, the successful person, the person who didn't commit the wrong, ends up getting screwed. This is a perfect example. It was my pen that was stolen from my desk. Kid took it. Teacher saw my dad's name on the pen and said, in the name of fairness, no one gets the pen. That's fairness. That's leftism. That's not justice. And that's something that millennials need to understand. That's something that anyone out there needs to understand. Fairness and justice are not the same thing. And when you play identity politics and you play fairness and you talk about fair share and you throw it out without defining it, it inevitably favors the person who's willing to game the system. They're perfectly fine with screwing the other guy as long as they gain from it. All right, so glad to bring on this next guest. We've had him before, longtime colleague, I guess we can say, of mine, chief editor of dailywire.com. You can follow him at Ben Shapiro. He is somewhere on his college tour right now. I think Chapel Hill. When I asked Ben before the break, he said, I don't know Chapel Hill. So you're getting Ben Shapiro with half brain power today. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair, which means that, I'll take on 3 lefties instead of 6 at a time.
Well, yes, that's pretty much what I figured. Okay, so you have had a couple of weeks. I mean, it's just a whirlwind of your college speaking. Obviously, we can get right to it. We've talked about it on the program. We have had guests from the other side, the Michelle Fields incident, Donald Trump. Firstly, how are you feeling about this? Because as someone who's been in the conservative movement, I guess, since you were, 17? Very young, syndicated columnist. I get messages all the time, and you know this, from top people who are going, yeah, this is fractured friends, family. What's it like right now for Ben Shapiro?
I mean, look, I'm used to receiving criticism, but what I'm not really used to receiving is accusations of being a leftist because I don't support a leftist like Donald Trump. That one's kind of new to me. Being called a social justice warrior because I don't think it's appropriate when a campaign manager grabs and bruises a woman's arm. This is new stuff to me. It's so that I find troubling and upsetting. And it's never fun looking at your Twitter mentions and you have thousands and thousands of people calling you a conservative and a social justice warrior and photoshopping purple hair and a nose ring on you and all that kind of crap. But I guess
I do find funny. I do respect.
I thought it was
Ben
funny,
for saying this is that he was more offended by the purple hair than all the the Nazi anti-Jew propaganda. That doesn't even seem to bother him.
That doesn't bother me anymore. That you grow a thick skin with regard to the Nazi anti-Jew crap after a few weeks of this. I mean,
but the feminist Photoshop, that's where Ben has his own
That's
line.
where I draw the line. That's where I draw the line. Once they stick the purple hair and the nose ring on me, I'm done. I'm out.
And it's so accurate too. When I went to the Feminist Film Festival, I was sitting there going, I mean, did they have a convention before the convention to agree on the outfits?
The same vendor sits outside each one of those, just selling the same, kind of like the light sticks and glow sticks, but it's for the hair stuff.
Yeah, they do have a rule. The rule is nonconformity through conformity, sort of like the Trumpkins rule, which is conservatism through non-conservatism.
Yeah, I mean, here's the one thing I will say though: I have more respect for people like like Milo, friend of ours, who says, "Listen, it has nothing to do with conservatism anymore. I don't really care about the principles behind it. People are mad, and we want to see him burn this down." There are people who have said that. I understand that. It's not my belief, but that's very different, I think, from some of the mental gymnastics required for people who claimed to be Christian conservatives.
Fully agree with this. Fully agree with this. I mean, when Milo says that he doesn't think conservatism, has achieved what its purpose was, like, if you want to admit who your man is and then say you're voting for him because of who he is, or even if you're voting for him because of who he isn't, right? He's not the establishment, so I want Trump. That's at least a fair argument. What I can't abide is if you oppose Donald Trump, then it must be because you're not a real conservative who doesn't care about the Constitution or conservative. That's just stupid. I'm sorry, it's just stupid. And if you're going to defend Trump on the grounds that he's a decent, wonderful human being, I think that's equally stupid. I don't think that he's a decent, wonderful human being.
Well, I think some people defend him on the grounds that they like that he's an ass, and that's what I'm saying.
Right, which is fine. Again, that's a fine argument. Fine argument. He's an ass, and you can like him because of that.
Yeah.
There's a question as to whether it also makes you an ass, but that's at least an argument.
It's true. Well, I think liking him because he's an ass is fine. I think people liking him because they think he has a backbone is entirely misled, because I don't think Donald Trump has met an adversary that he's really taken head on. So, okay, the Michelle Fields situation. Obviously, you've caught a lot of flack for this. This is happening this week, right? The video released, and there was a couple things that need to be clarified. You're a lawyer, so people need to understand that.
Yes.
Battery is different from assault. Simple battery is different from assault. I've seen a lot of sites use it interchangeably. That must frustrate you because it doesn't help the case.
Yes. People are stupid. Also, felony battery is different than simple battery.
Right.
Misdemeanor battery is not the same as felony battery.
Right.
People look up the law in the state of Florida. All a simple battery is an unwanted touching that is intentionally performed.
Exactly.
That's it. That's the entire definition.
So people who don't understand that, I can understand why they'd say, and as someone who has been at the receiving end of full-on violent assault, very different. We know. We were on the phone when that happened. I can understand people saying, oh, this is exaggerated. Now, I think there are two components here. There's your opinion on Michelle Fields, someone's opinion as to whether it was exaggerated, and there is the law and what constitutes battery and what was said. So,
and then there's the real story here, which really has nothing to do with Michelle and has much more to do with the Trump campaign lying and smearing her. Right? I mean, that's really the story here, because the fact is, if Corey Lewandowski just says, shouldn't have done that, my bad, apologizes within 24 hours instead of going on Twitter and calling Michelle a liar and an attention whore, then all of this is over immediately. I mean, the reason she went and filed a police report...
Did he say attention whore?
He said attention seeker, and all of his followers said attention whore. Look, when you say attention seeker about a woman, everybody knows what you're talking about, essentially. And so, the idea here that the Trump campaign was pushing is that this was some sort of giant conspiracy to get Trump, which, if it was, it's the stupidest conspiracy in the history of the world. I mean, your conspiracy is that you're going to go into a press room knowing that his campaign manager is going to grab you by the arm, pull you back, that you're going to happen to bump into a reporter from the Washington Post who saw the same thing, and that his campaign manager is then going to deny it, and Trump is going to deny it, even though there are cameras on them, right? That's your giant conspiracy. I mean, well, what a conspiracy it is. I mean, boy, it's like the JFK assassination. Well, but Trump people think that's what this is. I mean, they're watching this thing like the Zapruder tape, going, well, originally the case was she was never touched. Then the case was, well, she was touched, but not that hard. And now you got Trump out there like the utter dolt that he is. I mean, this is not a man with high IQ. And you have him out there saying
and
things
Jerry
like,
said, everyone knows my IQ is the best. We'll bring up
his
that
IQ
tweet.
is the best.
That's actually what he said.
He has said that. He also says he has a very good brain, which, by the way, no one with a very good brain in human history has ever said, because it makes you an idiot. But Donald Trump says about Michelle Fields that, there she is. She was holding, the Secret Service, they were bothered by it. She was holding, what was it? Was it a pen? Was it a knife? It could have been a little bomb. Yes, Donald. I'm sure it was all of those things. You bloviating sack of crap. I mean, really, it was like a reporter holding a pen. What do you? Well,
I think,
and the Secret Service looks tremendously bothered by all of this in the tape. I mean, it's not like they have training in dealing with actual threats. You need Medal of Honor winner and Normandy hero Corey Lewandowski swooping in from behind to save the Republic by pulling Michelle Fields 4 feet back.
Well, key word for me, again, this is just the personal, is the from behind. Same thing with the protester, grabbing the collar from behind. He's looking at the protester and the rally, and nothing. Guy reaches away and harumph. He's looking at Michelle Fields the whole time. Nothing. And then when she's turning away, harumph. That to me is like, oh my gosh, just from a personal standpoint.
And listen, I'm a guy who believes that women ought to be treated differently than men. If someone did that to my wife, that's different than if somebody does that to me. I'm
sure, I support the
way.
double standard.
Of course, I support the double standard because I don't think that women ought to be treated physically the same way that men are. I'm not a feminist, right? I don't have the purple hair.
I've talked about this. My wife has swatted me on occasion, not, but like on the shoulder when I did something really, and I would never do it to her. And people,
so you knocked her into the next room. Like
yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
I was just talking about this too. Like women don't understand the difference. I was doing this. I had this surgery and I have this spinal cord injury, so I was doing these. Like before the EMG tests, they check, they go, okay, curl against me and press against me. And this like old Filipino lady who was my neurologist, she's like, oh, you're very strong. I'm like, what are we doing? I could literally shove you out the third story window right now. How can you offer resistance and tell? I fully
Did you say Rindo? You just said Rindo.
Well, because I was still in the Filipino mode.
Okay, we'll go with that.
Sorry.
So one of the things that's been bothersome to me is the failure to even recognize the basic facts. Again, you want to make the case that Michelle made a bigger deal out of this than it was. I don't think that's fair, but that's at least a case you can make. If you want to make the case that Corey Lewandowski never touched her or that he's some sort of hero for pulling her away, that's just stupid. I'm sorry. And you saying that the tape exonerates your man? No, the tape shows exactly what Michelle said it showed. And by the way, she went silent for 24 hours after this happened. Jimmy Weinstein tweeted, but she went silent for well over 24 hours after this happened. I talked with her the night after it happened, and I encouraged her because of all the flack she was getting to go file a police report the next morning. She didn't. She didn't want to. It was only after the Trump people started pushing her, well, if it's so real, if it really happened, why don't you go file a police report? And she went, okay, fine, I will. If you're gonna say that I'm faking bruises on myself, then I'll go ahead and do it. I mean, the whole thing is just the whole thing is ridiculous.
Ben Shapiro just admitted to talking with Michelle Fields the night afterwards, start the rumor that he had an affair.
Yeah, there it is, right? And that's the other one that I'm really enjoying is the reason I.
Hey, it's enough. It's more than the National Enquirer had.
That's right. I mean,
personally, Ben Shapiro slept with me. Everyone report it.
Oh, absolutely. Come on, dude. It was awesome. And the part of this that's so ridiculous is that Trump actually goes out there and he exaggerates what Fields originally said in order to claim that she exaggerated it, right? So she never claimed that she fell to the ground.
Well, here's the thing. I will say this. I think her claim, the accurate claim, was, I would say, slightly exaggerated. However, Donald Trump absolutely, and Corey Lewandowski absolutely lied about her claim, and they lied about her not being there and not meeting her. And the only reason I say that is because having seriously faced violent assault, having been a part of it, you see it all the time, whether someone shows up at a college and kids yell and scream hate speech and they classify it as assault and people build these things up. Like, for me, I've always tried to mitigate it because I just want to do comedy. So I don't want to be a part of that culture. I'm not saying Michelle Fields did it intentionally. It didn't look severe. However, you don't put your hands on a reporter, period.
And you certainly don't grab a woman hard enough to bruise her arm. End of story. I mean, grab, yank, bruise is fine for me.
Legally, can that be proven that the bruises were from him?
Well, I mean, she did go. I mean, the only way that you can do it is, well, two ways, right? I mean, number one, her testimony, right? And number two, presumably they took a picture of her, and she told me they did. The police took a picture of her arm. Theoretically, they could match that up maybe to his hand size, for example, because you can actually see finger imprints on her arm. And also Ben Terrace of the Washington Post actually in his report says bruises started to form on her arm. Right, so he actually says that he saw that second witness testimony, and this is what everybody is. This whole thing is bizarre. Yeah, Ben Terrace was conspiring with Michelle Fields of Breitbart. Right, you're right. The Breitbart reporter was deeply out to get. It was Breitbart. They were deeply out to get Donald Trump. I mean, if you viewed Breitbart at any time in recent history, this is probably the most absurd part of the whole conspiracy theory: is that Michelle was as hired by Breitbart. Again, Breitbart was deeply out to get Donald Trump. Right. This isn't Jimmy Carter Jr.
Well, I
getting
think
into the
actually,
Romney campaign.
If we're being fair, Breitbart, I understand what you're Breitbart the trademark, but I think Breitbart the man probably would have been out to get Donald Trump.
Oh, are you? Okay, first of all, I think Breitbart the man would have flown down to Florida and confronted Lewandowski and Trump about this whole thing the day after. I don't think that they, so this one, again, people
I just say like Andrew now. I just say Andrew.
Yeah, Andrew. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, one of the things that's so ridiculous is people are acting like Michelle originally claimed that Corey Lewandowski grabbed a crowbar and hit her in the head or something. I mean, what she claimed is that he grabbed her, yanked her back, pulled her toward the ground. She lost her balance momentarily and regained it. And then when she said on Megyn Kelly's show, I think it was Thursday night, when she said on Megyn Kelly's show that, this had been the worst trauma of her life, she didn't mean the physical stuff. She meant a massive national campaign coming after her and trying to smear her as somebody who is just making things up and and in order to get Donald Trump. Like she desperately needs the attention. Michelle ended up quitting Breitbart over this, and she doesn't have another job yet. So, the idea that she was doing all of this because she was desperate for another job or because she wanted more pay. I mean, there's a report today from The Blaze. I've been pushing her to go on TV and defend herself because Trump is, again, calling her a liar and presumably an ISIS assassin with her magic pen bomb. And I've been pushing her.
It could be a detonator.
It could, you never know with those pens. She could have brought him to a table and done the Joker trick from The Dark Knight. Right? Maybe she was Jason Bourne and it was Bourne identity, and she was just going to start fighting him with the pen.
Right.
Who knows? It could have been anything. But I've been trying to push her to do that. She texted me late last night. She says, "Here's the reason I'm not," and she linked me to the affair. And she texted to the Blaze, to an article from the Blaze that points out that she has now had to abandon her apartment because they accidentally published.
We have to go to a break, but I want to bring you back. Ben Shapiro, Daily Caller, DailyWire.com. Be back. Oh, glad to be back. I apologize. Daily Wire.
You're on a little safari there. That's pretty cool.
DailyWire.com. Our guest. There's so many dailies. Ben Shapiro knows this. He's a professional. He'll forgive me. He could sue me. He's got the secret establishment Jew shekels. Ben, are you still with us?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
I don't know how to deal with this. We've all got the. I tell you what, though, I've never experienced more. I guess I hate to use anti-Semitism in my life. And I'm not Jewish.
Yeah, no, you're an honorary Jew now because you oppose Trump. That's the way this works.
Well, no, it wasn't even the Trump, just the Israel thing. Like, I turned to Jared, and I've turned to Jared several times. I go, because I don't really get particularly offended, but I go, man, it's got to be rough for a guy like Ben Shapiro to literally go into his timeline and see Nazi propaganda. It's at some point you got to go, nah.
It's certainly annoying, and I'm tired of hearing that it's just us being pranksters. There are certain things that really are not. Like, when I can't distinguish your tweets from David Duke's, and that's not my fault, that's your fault, right? I mean, if you tweet me like an anti-Semitic meme, you're like, yeah, I'm just being a free speech prankster. First of all, do what you want. I'm not saying the law should come and get you. I've never called the cops on anybody because of what they say. But if an open white supremacist and your tweets are indistinguishable in every way, then how exactly? I can't read your mind, and it doesn't sound very much like I'd want to, because I'm not sure that there's anything there.
Right.
Anti-Semitism isn't really a fresh prank, though, either. I mean, if we're going to get down to something that's really, it's been done. I mean, it's been done really well.
3,000 years of the merry pranksterism later. They're still trying to see.
Some would say
prank.
millions of Jews murdered was the apex of the prank.
It's kind of old.
I mean, solid prank.
That's one for them, Ben. That's one for them.
6 years later, all the Jews are gone. Boom! What a prank. I mean, but it's
scoreboard.
It's amazing.
Scoreboard Stormfront. It's a weird time to be here. Okay, so we want to wrap up the Michelle Fields thing. I think there's room for people to be critical, but. Like you said, if someone, my problem is someone can say, well, she exaggerated, and the arguments when I see that are usually based on the lie that she said she was thrown to the ground, which she didn't. I mean, Michelle Fields, regardless of one's feel, her statement never changed.
That's right.
The way it was presented.
And by the way, it was backed by Ben Harris, right? I mean, his report in the Washington Post never changed either. But they called her a liar. They called him a liar. Right. They suggested that she was after Trump personally and that this was all just made up.
But that's brilliant, though. That's brilliant because that is within the realm of reason. As people who have been long-term conservatives, you know that the media can be out and they can target people regardless of the truth. And if you hear the false claims, not the actual claims, if you don't read the statements, you can believe, well, if she said she was thrown to the ground, and it's no surprise that Washington Post would back her up. It's easy to buy in.
Well, this is the part about the Trump campaign that I really find despicable is they just put out these waves of lies that are almost undebunkable, meaning because they're so large. So yesterday, Donald Trump was on MSNBC, and he actually said that Michelle Fields was fired from Breitbart. Okay, that's an outright lie. It's an outright lie. He just makes things up. I mean, he's making up this whole story about Michelle was told twice by the Secret Service not to touch Trump. You can watch the tape, okay? It never happens. It's the whole thing is really absurd, but because Trump is lying all the time and because his believers refuse to believe that he's lying even half the time, they just take what he's saying for granted. And he operates, as you say, in this very safe space for him, which is no matter what I say, it can't be debunked because the only people who are there to debunk it are the media you don't trust. So Trump is the wages of sin, basically. The media has been horrible for 30 years, and so what you end up with is a guy, well, really 70 years, and you end up with a guy like Trump who just says, I'm going to lie as openly and as blatantly as possible, and I'm going to dare you to debunk me because no one trusts you.
I don't know that he's proactively lying, just like he had never thought of abortion. I think he just says things and refuses to apologize, and then if it happens to be untrue, he has to continue with it.
I generally agree with you. I do think, however, that when he's saying that, I think that the magical story about the pen bomb from Michelle is completely a lie, right? I mean, he was there. That's a natural lie. When he says, yeah, I was deeply, she assaulted me, which is the new claim. I mean, this is, by the way,
she came on to me, okay?
Right. Okay, in Donald Trump's dreams, right? In Donald Trump's dreams, Michelle Fields assaults him. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's for a man who has mail order brides. I think that he really ought to take a second look at how he treats women.
That's true. If I wanted a wife like that, I could buy one too. If I wanted boobs like that, I could also buy them. It's not that impressive.
It's amazing. It's an amazing country.
I actually think she seems like a decent woman. I don't know. The whole wife thing. It seems like. Okay, where do you think, regardless of what happens here?
By the way, I don't, whether she's a decent woman or not, the beginning of the relationship was not particularly decent. If you read about that.
No, of course not. Well,
he was married at the time, and she was having an affair with him, and she was going on Howard Stern and talking in extreme detail about their sex life while posing nude on the cover of magazines.
Wait, was this Melania? Or I thought that was Maples who talked about the sex.
Oh no, Melania too. Melania, he was still technically married to Marlo when he was knocking on Melania's door.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know.
And presumably at some point there will be a fourth wife where he upgrades and has an affair with her while he's married to this one based on prior precedent.
Well, you know what I don't understand with the wife thing? Regardless of where you line up politically, Heidi Cruz is an attractive, she's older than me, but she's an attractive older woman. I don't get it. Like, it's not a valid insult that she's ugly.
Well, it's not a valid insult anyway, because I mean, if what Heidi Cruz's looks have to do with anything is beyond me. But Trump, he's just such a
Well, I understand what they would have to do with Trump. I mean, listen, you have a very pretty wife, and it's always men like having a pretty woman on their arm. I understand that. I have a pretty wife.
Yeah, my wife's also a doctor. Your wife actually does things.
I don't care about that. No one cares about that. No one. That's not required. We're almost out of this time for the segment. All right, real quick, we have 1 minute. Ben, where do you think the Republican Party goes from here?
Into the scrap heap. I mean, I think that
no matter who it is?
Almost regardless. If Trump is deprived of the nomination, then he and his followers walk out. At least for 4 years, we're done. If Trump wins the nomination, I think that we're done for a generation, because he's just a smear across the face of conservatism.
Yeah, well, that might be true. But maybe he can sell it to feminists as a pap smear, and they go, well, we're on board with that so long as it's free. Ben,
back to Planned Parenthood, you never know.
You never know. Ben Shapiro, dailywire.com. You also have Klavan over there. Great website. Yep. I highly recommend it. So, Ben, go get some rest, but we want to have you back as this stuff develops, because we don't have to censor you. So thanks for coming on, brother.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. Be well.
Louder with Crowder, everybody. Stay tuned. Of course, send your hate mail. Not to me. Send it to Ben. You can send the anti-Semitic stuff to either of us. Louder with Crowder. Stay tuned.